I'm just going to start by reading this statement I got from the Associated Press. North Korean leader Kim Jong Un has died, although the North Korean media has not officially stated how. It is believed it may have been the result of a heart attack. It is not yet known who will take over as head of the communist regime. U.S. President-elect Donald Trump has said he will reach out to North Korea. He is quoted as saying, "They've got no leader, no food, and no economy. This can be their chance to get things going for the better. If they're smart, they'll take the olive branch." Good Mark TV morning. Now, before you go breaking out the bubbly, I want you to know that that story is absolutely false. That is what we would call fake news. You see, Kim Jong Un, as far as I know, and the world knows, is still very much alive. But you have to wonder, if he died, would they tell us anyway? Now, well, fake news is not new, and anyone who's walked by the loads of newspapers with publications like the National Enquirer and World News will know that fake news has been around for a very long time. I mean, we've been hearing things like Elvis Presley still being alive or Kim Kardashian being an alien. Now, while some will argue those could potentially be true, for the most part, we acknowledge those as being fake news because those channels, those specific publications, that type of media, has always published stories which, for the most part, make no sense and are totally false. But with the popularity of social media, things have changed, and there are certain individuals out there who are writing stories based on absolutely nothing. There is zero fact in any of this. And they're uploading these stories they're writing to platforms like Twitter and Facebook. People are reading them and believing them, and in some cases even acting on them. Such is the case of a story of a human trafficking ring being run under tunnels in Washington, D.C., all being managed by an advisor of Hillary Clinton. Now, according to the story, there's children involved who are being sold as sex slaves, all being run by tunnels starting off from this pizza place. Now, this kind of has been going online for a while, this story, although it's based on absolute no fact at all. There was this guy here who decided he was going to take matters into his own hands and hopped in the car with a semi-automatic rifle, visits the pizza place, and fires a couple shots into the ceiling in his effort to find and save these children. And although this guy may have had good intentions, the fact is he was still an absolute idiot for believing this story. In fact, the only person who was probably a bigger idiot than him was this woman who wrote the story, and after finding out what events happened as the result of that story, her only response was that she was happy she got more followers. Another story that's been going around is the Santa and the sick child story. Now, you've probably heard about this one. It's been going everywhere. It's appeared in such publications as USA Today, the Chicago Sun-Times, and the story goes is that there was this child who was just on the verge of death. This child was going to die like any moment, and the hospital called this guy, this specific guy here, I can't remember his name, but that's his name. They called this guy to come over. This guy's a professional Santa, to come over to the hospital and sort of see this kid, because this kid was going to die, but he wanted to see Santa. This was his last dying wish. So the guy rushes over. He spends time alone with the kid, and then the child says, "Santa, can you help me?" And then he dies in Santa's arms. It's a real tearjerker, pulls at the heartstrings, and totally fake. But stories like this and many others are catching on and becoming commonplace in the consciousness of the public. Now, a lot of media experts will tell you that the problem is people don't trust conventional media, and that's why they're turning to places like Facebook and blogs to get their news. But I kind of disagree with that. I think the real problem is people can't tell the difference between real news and editorial. You see, real news is factual. It's talking about something that's actually going on. It can be proven and defined. For example, a plane crash or an explosion somewhere or a car crash or even something good, which usually doesn't make the news that often. But something that's actually happened, you can't argue about it. And in many cases, we get that news delivered to us by someone we trust, like this guy, Walter Cronkite. The problem is, over the last number of years, we've been getting more networks and news shows kind of mixing in factual news with editorial opinion and bringing guys like Bill O'Reilly here to the forefront. So now, instead of us just getting the news and the facts, we're getting opinion. And of course, opinion is always going to be slanted based on who's giving it. So I don't think the real problem here is fake news. I mean, there's always going to be fake news, and there always has been fake news. Now, while conventional media, that being TV and newspapers, well, they can complain about this whole fake news epidemic, they have themselves to blame in large part. You see, there was a time when something would happen in the world, and the story would be brought to the attention of the newspaper or the television station or whatever, and there'd be a team of 4 or 5, maybe even 6 people who would fact check to make sure they got the details right, that these events actually occurred as they're being described, and then they would confirm everything and it would be on the 6 o'clock news. Now the problem is these media outlets have had to do cutbacks. They're feeling the crunch because so many people are turning to the internet, which also delivers news 24/7 constantly. So what's happening now is information will come to the attention of mass media or publications, newspapers, television stations, whatever, and they don't have the resources. They got to look at that story and think often within minutes, is it a real story? Is it something we should print? And occasionally they're going to have the resources to allocate to find out, but usually not enough, or they're just going to let it slide through like the Santa story. And now a story that nobody was interested in or didn't take much notice of is all of a sudden in a real newspaper or featured on a real television show. And that makes it real, even though it's fake. I think what's important here is that we all understand that the internet has empowered every person on the planet to say whatever they want and allow it to go public within seconds. Now, as much as people say they don't trust mainstream media, the fact is mainstream media still operates to higher standards than somebody working out of a spare bedroom or their basement in their pajamas all day, just typing away whatever comes to mind. Now, as I'm one to always want to share advice with you, the business owner, I'm thinking, you know what, maybe you'd like to come up with your own fake story, perhaps put a twist on it to promote your product or company, or maybe you're just in need of a little attention. The fact is, creating a fake story is super easy, and I'm going to share with you the 3 key ingredients you need to create your own fake story. So the first thing you'll need is a problem. That's right, every good fake news story has a problem. Now, in the case of the Santa and the sick boy story, the problem was that the boy was on his last breath. He was close to dying, and he needed to see Santa Claus immediately. Time was of the essence. That's the problem. So once you've established your problem, you're going to need a solution, or sometimes referred to as a hero. Now, a solution doesn't always need to be an individual. Sometimes it can be a situation, an answer to a question, a discovery, anything that solves the problem. And in the case of the Santa and the boy story, the hero was Santa. He made it there just in time. And now the third component to any great fake news story is details. That's right. The more details you have, the more believable any story will be. Time, place, date, names of people. You put all these things together and the story will become so believable, almost nobody will question it. And then ideally you put all these 3 components together and come up with something that just kind of gets you on an emotional level. Makes you sad, makes you happy, makes you angry. It doesn't matter, but it's got to create some kind of reaction. After all, if people read it and go, oh, well, who cares? Well, it's not really that good a story, is it? Now, if there's one thing I want you to get out of this episode, beyond learning how to write a fake story, is to understand that information is going to come from everywhere, from anybody, all the time. And we have to take responsibility as a society as to what we're going to believe. And yes, I know it can be difficult, but you know what? I have faith in you. Now, if you have some thoughts on this episode, I'd love to hear them. Post them down below. You know I'll answer back. If you want to learn more about Mark TV episodes as they go live, just click the subscribe button down in the corner. And I hope to see you next time. As always, I'm Mark Gordon, and you've been watching Mark TV.